Welcome to Socializing Security, where every week we have a discussion about security, compliance, and beyond.
Our goal is to learn and grow by socializing each week's topic with each other, our guests, and with you.
A quick compliance note, this podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal or regulatory advice.
We're glad you've joined us, and we hope you'll learn along with us.
And we're back for another episode of Socializing Security. But one of the things we really wanted to talk about is getting a job between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Everyone's always like, don't even bother applying, which I don't necessarily agree with that advice. But, it is true that work stuff comes at you so quickly during this time that I think like hiring managers and everything, there's certain things that they're like, I don't even have the time to onboard people right now, or like, I don't even have the time to review candidates. I don't think it's necessarily like the business still needs people. I think it's usually, they also don't necessarily want to bring people on if suddenly they're off for 12 days or whatever you just said, selfishly. So it's an interesting time of year. I think what we're hoping to talk about today is really some of our personal perspectives of what it's like to get a job in the technology industry and tech field today at the moment. We both had interesting journeys in 2024 related to job searches and job changes. So I think we can definitely pull off of personal experience. And we also just have seen, unfortunately, like a lot of our close colleagues and friends have been impacted by layoffs within the industry. It's just something that it's unfortunately impacted so many of us. I'd be surprised if I knew anybody in tech that didn't know anyone firsthand that had been laid off.
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of years for the entire industry. Particularly the employee side of it, maybe not the companies themselves. They seem to be doing pretty well. I'll try to not go down that particular rabbit hole. But yeah, the whole employment situation over the last 5 years or so has been just absolutely insane. You go back to when COVID hit and a lot of companies just pulled the brake real hard. I was actually in the process of hiring somebody and they pulled the brake on me when COVID happened. We don't know what's going to happen, so let's hold off on doing anything here. And then that was followed by what seemed to be a spree of people getting new jobs and just people's rates just skyrocketing. People were just hand over fist getting money for new jobs. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And it was, it's a lot of overcorrection. Like I recently got a car that has the semi self-driving, like it'll keep you in the lane. And I was playing with it the other day and noticed it was just bouncing me back and forth more and more aggressively between the two lines in a really wide lane situation. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know that I really trust this. But in some ways that's been about what the hiring recruiting situation has been over the last 5 years. It feels like it's just bouncing back and forth and back and forth. And then all of a sudden, we're not hiring people, but we're laying people off en masse. So it's been an interesting time. I don't know, we have experiences there on both sides of the fence, both as people have been part of the hiring process and people that have been affected by some of these things. But I don't know if it's normal. I don't know if this is the new normal. Every time I give people advice in this space, it's kind of as far as I know, this is the way it is right now. Hopefully it changes in 3 months for those that are looking for jobs. But yeah, we'll do our best to share what we've been seeing and hopefully help somebody along the way.
Yeah, I feel like one of the main platforms I would recommend when you're on a job search is LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I think it's just one of the best options. I have some thoughts about their privacy practices and what we share, but it's where you can find most of our content for Socializing Security is on LinkedIn. So it's definitely a platform that we actively use and support. And I would say what I've noticed, say we're talking now at the end of the year 2024, I've noticed I'm still seeing a lot of layoff posts. I'm also, which I would say was my trend for 2024, was so many of my close contacts on LinkedIn were posting hey, I need support. I'm looking for a new job. And again, I was seeing that as everyone was definitely jumping in to help out, which was inspiring. I think in the past when you've seen posts like that, I don't think people have been as receptive to those necessarily. I think this year, because so many people knew how many people were impacted and that it has been long leeway times to get a new job, people have definitely been more helpful. I will say in the last month or so, I've suddenly started to notice more people announcing that they have new jobs or promotions. And I have not seen much of that on my personal news feed. And again, that might be biased, but I've just suddenly noticed, I'm like, oh, it's nice to see some more good news on my platforms.
Yeah, I just saw another layoff yesterday. It was another one of those. It's like, what in the world were they thinking letting a person like that go? And it's just been consistently. So I guess maybe let's talk about our personal stories a little bit, and that'll help people understand kind of what context we're bringing to the conversation. So for me, it was May of 2023. I got laid off in the first of several rounds for the company I was at previously. I was a PE firm, a private equity firm, which has a reputation. If you're not familiar with it, I'm not going to taint you with my thoughts on it, but they do have reputations about, buy and consolidate. And that's the situation that I got into. And so, it felt really good to have a lot of colleagues come at me and be like, this makes no sense. I'm so sorry this happened to you. And, it took me a couple hours to kind of get to the point of, yeah, this sucks, but it doesn't make any sense, which to me really meant it's a pure bean counter type thing. They're like, okay, this much has to come off the top, and whatever metric they use, whether I don't think it was salary, because I don't think I would the highest salary. I live in a low cost area, so my salary is not as big as some people's. It wasn't necessarily my position on the team per se. I don't know what it was based on. As far as I know, it was somebody threw a dart and it hit my face. So I very quickly got to the point of let's not take this personally. There's people that could have stopped it, but I'm not going to get wound up about who those people are or worry about that or try to make sense of it. Time to move on. And I pretty quickly said, you know what, I'm gonna make this a personal story, and be public about it. I'm gonna talk about it because one, that's gonna help with my job search because even by that point, there was a few layoffs, but it hadn't really become endemic at that point. And so, I'm like, I need every opportunity I can. I felt like I was well connected in the community and wouldn't have much of a challenge. Come November, I finally get a job offer, which turned out to be better than what I had, and then started that following December. So about 6 months without a job. Um, we'll get into some of the stuff that I did to help get through that, some of the things I learned. But one of the things I know that you're going to touch on as well is, I started doing a lot of freelance work. And quite frankly, that's very enjoyable work. It's something I used to do as kind of a secondary job, if you will. It's a great way to learn new things that your current job isn't going to provide you. It's a good muscle for me to have already been flexing for years beforehand because I was able to fall into it pretty easily at that point. And then, I was one thing a lot of people don't know is I had created my own LLC. I was ready to go out and kind of just start doing that full time because I was getting discouraged to the point of I don't know if this is going to happen, and maybe I'm better off doing it for myself anyway because I was having some success doing kind of some one-off projects. Most of those ended when I got a full-time position, but had this job offer not come in November, I would have come out January guns blazing trying to find my own set of clients and just being a self-employed person until a really cool job offer came my way without me having to scratch and scrape and beg and steal in order to get one, which is what it was starting to feel like by month 4 or 5. So yeah, that's my story. I have several blog posts that I put out about that. We'll put links to them, but I'm sure we'll talk about some of the lessons I learned both for myself as someone that was looking for a job and myself wanting to help other people that get laid off. So I've consolidated those thoughts into consolidated might not be the best word for it because they were fairly lengthy blog posts, but
They're really insightful, though.
yeah, well, thank you. One was definitely insightful for me because I was able to reflect on myself. I've known people who've gotten laid off my entire career, and being able to reflect back and say, I wish I had known this back then. I need to write this down for other people to be able to have. So I feel like I came out of that having learned something, which honestly to me, if I can learn something, if I get a good story out of it, if I can grow as a person through a situation, there's no, I mean, there are bad situations that you never recover from, but there's no situation that can't be put to good use. And that was, I don't know, call me an optimist. I would never call myself that though, but I do try to find the positive in situations as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you putting a positive spin on it. Obviously, it's super shitty if you like lose your job. It's just really shitty. Like, and I'm not sugarcoating that at all. Like, it's just,
Yeah, there's
and
no way around it.
very often it is of no fault of the individual. Like it's, I feel
Hmm.
like it's very rare that it's performance based, and a lot of these layoffs that we're talking about have felt like throwing a dart and seeing who's collateral damage, right? I think that's kind of unfortunately what it's felt like for a lot of employees. I am happy to talk about my experience because it's definitely different than yours, but mine is focused more around on I think this past couple years has really taught me that like uncertainty is almost certain. And I was in a situation where my husband and I basically both thought we were going to lose our jobs at the exact same time, which was just maybe not a reality that I had ever necessarily thought of. It really made us rethink like our life planning strategy and like our financial strategies and plans, because we are more risk averse than we probably ever have been, because we were in a real situation where we were like, oh, it's not just like, oh, can we survive with one paycheck instead of two. It was suddenly like, what if we have no income for both of us? And what would that look like for both of us? So for me, unfortunately, like in 2023, my husband lost his job unexpectedly. He was not in the technology industry, but in consulting, which has also been very heavily hit by COVID and the ramifications of that, very similar types of industry ping pong that we've been seeing of like the cycles ebb and flow. And when he lost his job, that really spurred me to being like, how can I potentially supplement our income in the meantime? And so that was where I ended up setting up my own consulting firm, Compliance Counsel, and really started trying to actively look for clients that I could do on the side while I still had a full-time job. And fortunately, like my employer was totally okay with that. And like we had a good relationship, and I was able to manage consulting on the side a couple hours a week on top of a full-time job. Then the full time job ended up turning into, we actually also don't necessarily have the resources for you anymore. And so I was also impacted by layoffs then that next year. So fortunately at that point, my husband had landed somewhere else. But then suddenly I was unexpectedly laid off. And so, and I say unexpectedly because it was like I have worked in startups. Financial uncertainty is just part of the risk that you're playing. That's part of the
So
game,
true.
but you're always like, yeah, it's a risk. But no, this was actually like the fruition of that risk was, when things get tough, they have to make tough cuts. And this really was, they just didn't necessarily have the financial backing to support the full employee base. And I was unfortunately impacted by that. That's relatively common for compliance professionals specifically. We are a cost center, unfortunately. Sometimes we are teams that a lot of organizations feel like they might be able to outsource for a while. They might be able to be like, we can't justify an internal team, so we're going to get consultants, which is what I was doing for other clients, but suddenly I was impacted with my in-house role. So it's something that I was very fortunate at the time because I was very quickly able to find a different role, and that was very serendipitous. I don't want to say that that was like because of my background or anything. That was right time, right place. That was all there was to it. So I just got really lucky that a company that I had a relationship with coincidentally had lost their person. And so I ended up deciding to pursue a full-time job while I was still doing some consulting work. And that's kind of my reality now, is working full-time and still consulting on the side. And that still works for us for now. But I would say the freelance thing was absolutely the thing that gave me the financial freedom, as well as the like, oh no, in the worst case scenario, if I lose my job, I will have some income. And so it was definitely a creative way to get money. Being a freelance employee, or freelance, not employee, I guess you're your own employee, but being, I guess, a consultant and contractor, whatever you want to call it, comes with its whole other risk scenario where it's hard to generate business. You yourself, like me, myself, and I are the entire company. So you're responsible for sales and delivery and everything. And that's overwhelming in its own right. I think we've had conversations with other founders that have struggled with similar things. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's an easier path, but I think it did support both of us in the, what's going to help us pay the bills for the next couple months.
Yeah. And, we're both cognizant of a level of privilege that we have where I had savings that we could live off of. It did start to pinch, not to the point where we were looking at having to sell our house or cars or anything like that. But, we had planned for a situation like this because my particular household, single income and have been for decades. And so, there have been times when I would tell my wife, I'm going to go do something at work and it may not result in good fallout for me, but this thing is going on and I have to speak up, and I can't abide by this thing that's going to happen or whatever. And she'd rightfully get kind of freaked out. I'm like, it's part of the cost of having ethics, but I've built a strong community. We've built a strong financial situation where we should be able to absorb this. It'll be a hit, but we can absorb it. And so being of a certain age, I'm able, I've built that over the years to the point where I can have that to fall back on. So big pitch for make sure you've got you plan for the dark days. I mean, that's advice that I remember getting early on. I don't think we do a good job of financial literacy and those types of things in the public school systems in the US at least. But making sure you've got a nest egg, making sure you're planning for the future. I know that's easier said than done for a lot of people, especially in the midst of a recession and potentially not having a job. But you got to plan for those times, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was like my biggest takeaway of the job uncertainty was one, I was just like grateful to have a job. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And I don't want to say that I took it for granted in the past, but I did feel like it was easier to switch jobs in the past where like it was easier to be like, okay, like I'm going to look around and peruse. And that's, for me, that's not what the market felt like. It felt very much like I was most likely going to be taking a pay cut. I was going to be unemployed for a while, which is why I was planning on consulting to help float my costs and income. So I was trying to get creative with my income streams, but then also thinking through the like worst case scenario. I think I'm already risk averse. I'm a compliance officer. That's like my job. So I'm already risk averse by nature. And then I don't think my husband and I had necessarily like planned for a scenario where it was like worst case we both lose our jobs. And so I think that has really been like a takeaway for us for like our planning for the longer term is like, yeah, okay, like our emergency fund has to be bigger than maybe like general advice because we have seen it happen where we were in that situation. So like we're like, yeah, like we might be the small percentage where that's a realistic thing, but we're like we've seen it. And so for us that was our like big learning lesson. Again, I will say it all worked out for us. And I don't want to always say like I'm not going to say that to somebody who's been employed for months to being like everything's going to work out because that's not helpful. And I think maybe that's the point of the conversation where we should turn to now is like what's actually helpful, because I think that's something, Brian, like you had a lot of people reaching out because you had such a large network going into your layoff, which I think is unique. A lot of people don't have that. They get laid off and then they're suddenly like, oh my God, I need to get really active on LinkedIn and build this network. And you were lucky in the sense that like you had that network. But I guess I'm curious to hear from your perspective of all of the colleagues, friends, family, people that reached out, what was actually helpful?
Yeah, and that was a big lesson learned for me as to, what past me should have known for those people I was able to put into context. So people reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm sorry to hear that. Let me know if I can do anything to help." It's nice. I'm not going to say that wasn't useful or wasn't appreciated, but it's not as useful as I thought it was. Because when you're in that mode, like you're scrambling, like, oh, I haven't kept my resume up to date. What I need to make this thing really shine. Maybe it's up to date, but I really need to make it stand out. Are things that you're freaking out about. You're trying to figure out unemployment because it's a government program. It's impossible to figure out. It's a freaking nightmare. But it's important. Like you've got to get on that if you want those benefits. And quite frankly, get those benefits because you paid for them. We've all paid for them. At least in the US, I guess. Very, very US centric comment. Other countries may have similar. I don't know them. And so that knowing all of these people that said, oh, I'll help you if you need it is good. And it's great if I happen to stumble across a job that matches up with them or their network or their company. And there were situations like that. It's like, oh, hey, this company's hiring. Who do I know that works there? Oh, so and so. They pinged me the week I announced I had gotten laid off and said they'd help. So I would ping them and be like, hey, help me stand out. And that's really the key. Is it's about finding in today's market. I should caveat in today's market. It's not about applying for the job. Applying for the job is honestly if you're just applying for it based on seeing it pop up on LinkedIn, your odds are not good, to be completely frank. What you need to do is find somebody that can help you stand out. That ideally somebody that is on the team or knows the hiring manager or knows the recruiter, kind of in that order, so that hey, give this person a chance. They may not, the automation may not make them stand out, but the resume may not make them stand out, but they need to have a chance at this because I know this person. And even that's no guarantee of actually getting in on the conversation. So if you want to help somebody and you see them have that announcement, get them on the phone. Be like, hey, here's what my schedule looks like. Pick a time and let's get on and chat. Find out what they're looking for. Because a lot of us sit in a job and we all make a joke of it. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up as a 40-year-old because I'm always looking for something new and interesting to do. And I've, me personally, been struggling in the last several years. Like, what do I like? Which way do I want my career to go? Do I want to go into management? Do I want to go back into more of a sales engineering type of a role? Do I want to go back into straight up tech marketing? Do I want to go into product management? Like, I've got a lot of interests, and trying to find one job that lets me do all of them is pretty much impossible. And so they may not want to do the same job they just had. I was a storage administrator, but you know what, I was kind of bored with that, and this is going to force me to get out of my comfort zone and do something different. I want to get into virtualization, or I want to get into security. So people may be looking for something different than what they were doing before. So that's important to understand, so that even if you are aggressive at sending them job postings that you see, or hey, and I guess this gets into the second piece of it is, don't just send them job postings. Send them job postings, but if you have connections that can help there, make it clear to them, hey, I don't know if this job is perfect for you or not, but take a look at it. I've got somebody that works there that's a friend. They would stand up for you based on my recommendation. Also,
Yeah.
be very upfront. Like, here's a job. Is this what you want? Like, again, continue to understand what they're looking for. My perspective changed. I would interview for a product management job or three, and I would realize, you know what, I really struggled in those conversations. I don't think that's the right fit for me. The job duties they told me about don't sound that interesting. So my focus shifted over time. Like, I was casting a very wide net, but my my aggressiveness at certain jobs started to wane. And it'd be like, yeah, that one's nice, but this thing and this thing, probably not worth it. So be open about talking to the person about those postings and whether they fit what they're looking for.
Yeah. So I think just to kind of recap, because I think you just gave a lot of helpful insight, just to make sure that while I'm learning with you while you're explaining this to me, that one, it is helpful still. Like, we don't want to discourage people from like reaching out if you see your friend was impacted and being like, offering to help is a good thing. But taking the next step then about being like, hey, let me know how I can help. Because I've also had people be like, look at my LinkedIn connections and tell me if, and I'm like, that's not helpful. Like, respectfully, like, I appreciate the offer, but like, most of us have thousands of connections on like I have a lot of people on LinkedIn that I'm not necessarily sure who they are. So it would be like me reaching out for the first time. So like, I don't know if that's necessarily helpful. I would say though, obviously, like, if I'm a mutual connection, let me know and I will reach out. Like, I will cold email people for you. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that's different. If you suddenly are looking at a company or a job and it's suddenly like, Milou is a shared connection, like, obviously let me know, because I will happily send that email or message on LinkedIn if I don't know them to like sing your praises. I have no issue doing that. And I think a lot of people wouldn't either. Then the next one was also, if you're seeing job postings that you think are interesting, reaching out to the person sending it and being like, I know X person here, like, I'd be happy to send the intro. Let me know if you think the job is valuable, right? Because obviously you don't necessarily want to do that if they're like, this isn't what I want. And then I would also say, ask them for recommendations. Like, if people are like, hey, how can I help? And it's somebody that you've directly worked with, be like, hey, I'm going to send you a request for a LinkedIn recommendation. Would you mind adding that to my profile? That's at least one of the first things you can do. I'm not sure how helpful that is, but I do think it adds to your like package on your online profile and presence. So like, I've had a couple of people ask me to do that, and I've been like, absolutely, immediately, like, happy to do that. That's not a huge time commitment to ask somebody. So that's probably another one that I would recommend. Again, I'm not sure. Maybe it would be helpful for us to reach out to a recruiter and ask like how valuable that is. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a few recruiters along the way. They obviously they tried. They never gave me any real results. The other thing that I found that bothered me and I discovered is not helpful is to say, "Oh, I work for such and such a company. Here's a link to our careers page." That puts the onus on me as the person that is desperately trying to recoup my income to have to spend the time looking through their job postings. And I don't know what the internal structure looks like. I don't know, I know what a systems engineer is at a healthcare company, but at that automotive company across the street, what are the duties for a systems engineer there? I don't necessarily know that. I don't, sometimes they have weird names. My personal situation, is there a difference between your tech marketing engineer and my tech marketing manager background? I didn't manage people. I led teams, but not as a HR manager. Just tech marketing alone is different from one company to the next. So what is it there? So if you're going to reach out and say, I work for company XYZ, let me know if you need any help with any of these jobs. And here's a link to our careers page. Spend 15 minutes and go through that list and say, what would be a good fit based on what I know for this person? And then for your cold reach out, hey, here's three positions I think might be good for you based on the last time I talked to you. That could be 2 months ago. That could be 15 years ago. I don't care as the person looking for a job. In fact, I really love some of the people that reached out that I hadn't talked to in 15 years. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. I made enough of an impression. And that person was nice enough to reach out. Give me three postings and then ask, do any of these fit what you're looking for? Is there any other jobs I should look for you? Like it's going to take you as a person that works for that company a heck of a lot less time than it would for me as a person that doesn't know anything about that company to go through his job postings and try to find something that's within the ball.
Yeah. Did you find, I'm not sure if anyone did this for you, but did you find any success if people like reshared your post about like, because you posted pretty openly that you were looking for a new role, if people like reposted that to the networks and were like, Brian's amazing and like, he's looking for these types of roles. Did you get any hits off of that? Like, were those types of posts helpful?
Yes and no. Yes, because know the algorithm of LinkedIn and play it. So I posted a lot to try and play the game, try to lift my profile on LinkedIn, if you will. I don't do it through just saying yes to every connection that comes along. I'm very much, you spoke about.
To clarify, I don't do that either, but
No, no, some people do. Some people are like guaranteed if you reach out, I'll accept your connection because they just want the pure numbers. I want to be able to, in that situation you mentioned before, hey, I see you're connected to this person at this company. Can you do an introduction? I want to be able to like have some at least a little bit of memory of that person. Like I want to be able to sit there and think about it for 5 minutes and be like, yeah, that person I used to work with at this other company.
this doesn't surprise me between either of us because of our personal risk tolerance with our like online presences. I think my guess is if any of our followers are trying to like connect with us on LinkedIn, I might be quicker to do so than you. But again, it very much has to be, they have to feel like a real person and have to have some tangible connection to me and like my interests and things I post about for me to be like, yes. Otherwise, I'm like, just follow me on LinkedIn otherwise.
Yeah, that's a little bit for me there. So back to your original question. The resharing, the likes, the comments are all helpful in raising
Awareness.
my I can't remember what they call it on LinkedIn, but there's a social score that everybody can, and you can go look it up. There's a way to look it up that indicates kind of like how frequently you're going to show up in the random algorithm type stuff. That definitely helped. I definitely saw the engagement and that particular number go up through my layoff situation. Now, the other side of the coin where I say no, not really, is because I don't think any of that helped me find the job that I ended up getting. That job that I ended up getting was actually acquaintances, people that I've known for years, not super duper close with, reaching out when they first heard about it and saying, hey, my team's been talking about maybe coming and putting together a new position. Is it something you'd be interested in? I was like, well, yeah, I'm interested in that. That's a slam dunk job for me. Uh, it took them a few months to get that job put together and posted. And when it posted, I instantly got an email from one of those people and said, hey, it's posted. If you're still interested in looking, go ahead and apply for it. And so that one worked out because of the network I already had established. It really had nothing to do with me having, showing up randomly in somebody's feed on LinkedIn. Though there were conversations I had that did result from that. So potential for a yes there. In the end, it ended up being no. That didn't help. But one of my pieces of advice is just get out there, be seen. Because if people are seeing you and know your situation, they're more likely to be like, oh, yeah, Brian's looking for a job. Hey, so and so, my friend over at this other company, I know somebody that's looking right now. He's done this, that, and the other thing. I used to work with him. I would definitely recommend him. And now all of a sudden a connection can be made. So yeah, raising your profile in any way is always going to be, well, okay, not in any way. I'm not a fan of there is no bad press. There is definitely bad press. You don't want bad press. Do it in positive ways, ideally showing your capabilities to a future potential employer.
Yes, I really like what you just said of saying actively use your platform, whatever it is, right? We've actively been praising LinkedIn, but there are so many others. Like, let's not be remiss in the fact that there are other ways to get a job beyond LinkedIn. Like, that's not the only platform. But if you're choosing your platform, whether it's, I've seen people that are looking for jobs on TikTok as an example, or Instagram, like Threads, like there's different options. I would say whatever platform you're using that you're feeling like you're getting good engagement and you have a solid audience of people that might actually be looking to hire you or know people that are hiring, I would say post very regularly. Don't just, I would say also, like, not just about you trying to get a job, but also the things you're interested in. So suddenly I post a lot about like compliance and privacy because like that's what I care about. So like that helps me also get following from people that are also interested in that because maybe those people are hiring, right? So it's not only just like, yes, absolutely post about your job search and that you're looking, but also things that you're interested in, like whether that's just like resharing an article or other things of just like sharing the things that you care about doing so that that also comes up with people about being like, oh wow, like Brian is a unicorn because he's interested in 12 different types of jobs. That's what I always say, like, so sharing that. And then also realizing that like word of mouth is still probably how you're going to get the job in this market.
Yeah. And I didn't do it with this particular job, but this has been a key to success. Why I started a blog. Well, because I learn things and I want to share it with people. And that learning out loud concept of things is a good way to show how you learn. It's a good way to show that you can retool. And quite frankly, if you're laid off for more than a month or two and your prospects aren't super great, it's a great opportunity to retool. Like, hey, there's this technology. I never really had time. My company didn't do anything with this. So maybe now's the time to start learning because I've theoretically got a little bit extra time on my hands. Learn it out loud, even if it's just, hey, LinkedIn folks, I'm gonna start really digging into Kubernetes and learning about that. I'd love anybody's advice on how to take the next step. And then take the next step and then be like, yeah, so and so gave me this advice and I did this thing and it was really great and I learned these things. Next, I'm going to do this thing that this other person suggested, and then you go do that thing. And showing your ability. So one of the hardest things that I found, both myself and friends in this job market right now, is that what used to differentiate us is our ability to just pick up a new technology and go. And we've demonstrated it for years and years and years in our career. That's really hard to show in a resume, and it's really hard to get past the point where your resume is your only face. And everybody puts, oh, and I love learning new technology, and I picked up this thing in 2 months, and yada yada yada. Sometimes having certifications can help show that, but being out there and being able to have public documented evidence that yes, I can pick up this thing on March 1st, and by August 31st, I'm doing a presentation at a user group meeting or something like that. Completely made up scenario is a way to demonstrate for somebody that is only looking at your resume and maybe clicking on your LinkedIn to be able to say, okay, well, this person worked here and let me look at some other posts. Oh, interesting. They really do know how to learn. I think is something that I don't know if I would have done differently with my job search, but I have seen other people do in the past.
Yeah. And again, I would also just say my last point that I'm going to make is reach out to people that you have connections with, that you think have interesting jobs. Because this is always like, I am an advisor for my law school. Every advice I always give to students specifically is reach out to people that you think have cool jobs and ask them how they got that job. Not necessarily if they're looking to hire somebody, but also just like reaching out and being like, you have my dream job. Like, what do I need to get that job eventually, whether that's right now or in 10 years. Because again, like I might have different recommendations for what certifications are useful for the type of job that I have. And Brian, I know you have the same thing, right? Like you would give very different feedback to people. And that can also be helpful because sometimes like you're looking at certs or courses and you're like, is this worth my money? Is this like actually a good use of my time? And so leverage your network to also ask for like advice for stuff like that can also be really valuable.
Yeah. And that aligns with my just get out there advice. So many times, like I would drive half an hour to go have coffee with somebody that I hadn't seen for years. My wife's like, why are you wasting your time? I'm like, I've got time. Time is the most valuable commodity we all have. And right now I've got more of it than I've ever had, and connecting with people who already know my capabilities and have connections that are unique in my network. Like, this is a person I haven't talked to and they work at this company that I've never worked with in this industry that I rarely ever touch. Who knows what could come of that? We had some interesting conversations just over coffee and about, hey, what's cool going on around here. Was, again, didn't turn into anything that turned into a job, but turned into very interesting connections that I was able to make that could have turned into something cool, but didn't. But doesn't mean there wasn't potential there. And quite frankly, part of keeping positive during a layoff is having potential. Like, there were times that were the saddest for me were the ones where there was nothing really exciting for me to work towards at the time. And so having, like, oh yeah, this person was talking about starting this business and was looking for somebody to help them with that. Oh, really? I would totally jump on with that. Let's have a conversation. Didn't turn in anything, but it got me excited for.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can end it on that, in that Socializing Security came off of a LinkedIn post. You should
Yes.
really just be sponsored by LinkedIn at this point.
Yeah, LinkedIn is maybe not the best social network, but it's far, far, far from the worst. Is kind of my perspective on it, and it's useful. I mean, it is the Rolodex in certain professions, tech being one of them. So it is what it is. I wish there was more variety. I wish it was a bit more open. I wish it was a bit more privacy minded, and didn't just enable certain features without telling anybody. But it's the nature of what we're playing with these days. It's a tool. Use it.
Yeah, and you'll never know what type of creativity it could inspire. All right, well, I think this was a really valuable conversation. I think we might have a series on this. I think, Brian, you probably could have kept talking, and I know I definitely had other things that we could have
Brian,
gone
keep
into.
talking? What?
Yeah, I'm going to cut him off at a certain point, but no, I really enjoyed you sharing your story, so thank you so much for kind of opening up with us, because we really appreciate it, and I think this was really valuable. I'm hopeful that people that are looking for jobs, good luck. I don't want to say anything we can do to help, let us know, but honestly, truly reach out to us, because you and I both have great networks. And so if there are people that are looking that we feel like we can help, we would be happy to do that. So I'm going to say that on both of our hats, that you're listening to us. We already invested in your career growth if you're already spending so much time with us.
Yes. So true. Yep. Well, appreciate it, Milou. This was a great topic, and look forward to probably talking about this more someday.
It's good.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Socializing Security. We hope you learned a thing or two with us.
If you'd like to continue socializing with us on this topic or have feedback, we'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or social media. Just search for Socializing Security. Or you can email us at info@socializingsecurity.com.
Until next time, stay social and stay secure.